Welcome, everybody.
Have you done a webinar before?
I have not. I have done Instagram Lives. What's the difference?
I think with the Instagram, you can just sort of, stumble into something. You can sort of go in and out, and you may not even know it's happening, but you get this little message that pops up. But I think what the rug company wanted to do, which I really like, is have it feel a little bit more intimate and a little bit more
Yeah, I love
considered.
that. Like a class, almost like an intimate little class.
Yeah, and you know what? The people who are joining us want to be here. They didn't just stumble in. They didn't happen upon us by accident. They actually,
that's a really great way of saying it.
Yes, they wanted to spend this.
Which leads me to introduce one of my favorite interior designers, and that's the truth, Miss Kelly Behun, in her beautiful home. I mean, talk about winning the backdrop contrast. You know how everyone is on backdrops? I mean, that is just absolutely sensational, but so happy to have you here. You've been an inspiration to me, a friend as well, which I love. We met in First Dibs, right? When they just curated it.
I remember it well.
And I'm just so happy to have you be here. Just to give a little preliminary history to everybody, how did this whole start? How did everything start with your career? I mean, did you come out like me, decorating your bedroom when you were age 4?
It's so funny because I did, but the difference is, but I want to hear this about you. Let me just start by saying, Adam, I remember so well that day that we met because I knew about you and your work and admired your work. But I didn't really know you until we sort of met, and I found that you were one of these people, and we all know this kind of person where, so I don't really know you well, but I feel like I've known you forever. And you have, well, I don't know if you're that way with everyone. I'd like to think I'm special, but there are certain people, right? No, but there's certain people that you feel like you have a connection with, and certainly we have shared interests and we're in the same business. But I felt immediately a sort of kinship with you, and like we'd known each other a long time.
I felt the exact same way, Kelly. And you know what? It's not something that I think is often that prevalent with designers and architects. I feel like there's sometimes a different sort of energy. Again, I come from the theater where we love loudly and we're also bonkers. And interior designers are much closer to the vest. So when I felt you immediately, it was thrilling for me. So
well, likewise. So it's one of those sort of intangibles. You don't know why, but it's what makes life interesting. So totally. I'm really happy that they put us together.
Me too.
So I'm happy to be here with you. But yeah, so in terms of, like you said, you sort of had this interest since you were 4, and I would say the same, but I had this voice in my head, but I think I resisted it for a really long time. So my path to get here is sort of a winding road. It was not a straight line, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I really am, I don't regret anything, put it that way, but I kept resisting this notion that I could make a career of interior design. And this was, again, like you said, from a very young age, we would go on a trip, we would go in a hotel, we would go in a restaurant, and I'd be like, I don't know. Don't you think if this was there and the color? And so, right, the cues were all there. And I remember still one of the greatest days of my sort of growing up preteen life in Western Pennsylvania was when my parents said that I could design my own room, which did include a shag rug, which was a very, very important feature.
Love that.
But it was so transforming for me. And yet still, I kept putting it off. So I had a stint on Wall Street, a very undistinguished stint on Wall Street, and lots of other crazy tangents. And then finally ended up.
The New York Times, I beg your pardon, calls you the interior designer with the eye of an art gallerist, which is so amazing and different from myself. But as you look at your beautiful backdrop, you see all the full-on pieces of art that are making the interior design and that add all that. And did you just love art? Was there a passion for it? I know you very well-known people in the beginning of your career.
Well, always loved art. Grew up going to museums with the family and just always sort of drawing a lot of inspiration from art. And so in my practice, and I know it's the same with you, integrating art at whatever price point. I'm a big collector of ceramics, and I feel like that's a great, easy entry level way to get into collecting art and supporting artists. So integrating art into interiors has been a really, really big part of it. But I want to know a little bit about you with your theater background. How did that?
I came, it's funny, you said your bedroom story. My parents went to Russia when I was like 10 years old for 2 weeks, and I bleached the oak. I lived in a 1939 cottage in Chicago, and I like bleached the oak floors and figured out a team. Like I went to the paint store and I had these
Oh
people.
my God.
I bribed them with like beer and my hot sister if they would paint it with me. So it was like a deep teal. It was actually a really good room. But it's just like you said, it's a part of you. You go in and you're like, is this me?
Right.
Or am I just a gay guy with good taste? And then the family business was Broadway. My mom was on Broadway. So I ended up in Les Mis when I was 21 in New York, and then had a really lovely career until I was 30. Lion King sort of did me in. That was the end of it for me. Moved out here to Los Angeles. And it's just sort of funny how things happen to you, you know?
Right.
I did the Kate Somerville Skin Health Clinic Spa, which was sort of the first moment that I thought, oh, I'm a designer. And then it's just funny how you align and energies and things then come to you, you know?
Right.
And we both love the rug company. So,
we love the rug company. I was going to say we could go on and on, but we should talk about
the rug company. You know, I'll start and then I'm going to pass it to you. I opened my place on Melrose, and just 2 years before the rug company on Melrose had opened. And from my personal experience of why I was so taken by it, it was the first time that I had seen fashion designers who, of course, for interior designers, I imagine for you, it's all starts and stops with fashion. Right. Those are the cues that come through my brain, whether it's a bag or a heel or whatever. And I'd never seen Vivienne Westwood, Paul Smith, of course, the great Lee McQueen at anywhere other than in a clothing boutique. So that's what really turned me on about it. What was your first introduction with the rug?
You know, my first introduction was, you know, I've been living in New York for a long time, and I was strolling around in Soho, and it was sort of early in my interior design career, quite early. And I remember walking by the showroom there and seeing the Paul Smith swirl when it was fairly new on the market. And you know, when you see things in life, whatever it may be, when it feels groundbreaking, it feels like some kind of paradigm shift in what a rug is. And I looked at this thing and I was like, I was mesmerized. I mean, the pattern is sort of hypnotic, but I remember standing there at the window and thinking, this is extraordinary. And to your point of clearly what they telegraphed to me was that they think outside the box, to your point about inviting, you know, fashion designers to design rugs. So I saw the rug and I felt I need to, and I had just one son at the time, and I said I need to have that rug.
I'm such a stalker fan that I know that you put it in his bedroom, right?
I put it in his bedroom. I think we have a picture of it, which I would love to show.
Oh, yes, let's show a picture of that.
So this is when, the picture is when I'm with my actually younger son there, but my older son was at school when they took the picture. But this rug, there was no design. There was no concept until I saw the rug. And I know sometimes people ask, you know, how does the design start? Do you start with the rug? Frequently you do start with the rug, and this is the reason why. I saw this and everything flowed from it. And the rug still is in his room. He's 20 years old today.
Well, I love it. I wouldn't have changed it either. I would never change it. How did you bleed the colors onto the bed so beautifully? Is that another Paul Smith?
Well, you know, that's what we do, Adam. That's what we do. I can't cook. Okay, so many things. I can't sing, but I know how to bleed a color. But yeah, I mean, and so, you know, there's this young artist off on the left. His name is Stephen Dean, a Brooklyn artist. And he took romance comic books and stacked them. And, you know, frequently on paperbacks, inexpensive paperback, the color, the pages, the edges are colored. So they're just this like rainbow of colors. And it's one of the first pieces we bought in the apartment. And I still love it as much as anything. And it was about everything kind of coming from this swirl rug and defining the space. And all of those things are still in the room, except for the fish.
You even got a hot model for the picture.
Well, it was a long time ago. But yeah, so that was my first encounter with the rug company, and it's been a love affair ever since. And, you know, I've been a client and a customer, and then started doing a lot of custom rugs with them over the years, and then, you know, sort of culminating in this new little mini collection launch.
That's what makes it so exciting. Tell us, since we're here organically, about the collection, how it started and became this luminous rug that I've already have specced out twice.
I love that. Thank you. I mean, I think it was just this idea of, wanting to be a part of this club, that you've been a part of for years with the rug company, and just having worked with them for years and really liking how they work with you to sort of demystify the process. Like, I just loved the process of doing custom rugs with them and how they help you work through all of the challenges of, taking something that's just a sketch, a drawing, a concept, an emotion, of whatever, and making it into an actual rug. And so for this collection, I think they say that you're inspired by what you see around you every day. And so I have out my window some really beautiful, iconic views of New York City, the city that I love and lived in since I graduated from college. And so these, there's 3 rugs. It's Eclipse, which we could show a picture of, which is very much about the sky, and you got a little bit there. This was shot, during the day, but you see a little bit of the blues. And so I really studied and took a lot of pictures, and the way the light changes in the space. And so what I loved was saying, okay, with the rug company, as we work through these designs, how can I get these colors? How can I get this ombre that happens in the sky? How can I get these pinks without making them too saturated?
That's what it is. It's so magically subtle.
But Adam, as you know, I mean, it's like making these things, it's one thing to have this idea, but then to convert it into a rug and this very specific kind of ombre. And, the craftsmanship at the rug company is second to none. And so their artisans were able to figure it out.
And they're lovely, good humans. It was baked in from the beginning. I remember going to meet with Chris Sharp when I was 13 years old in 2013. And I was so enamored. Well,
you were 13, right?
Yes,
Let's do the math.
13 years old in 2013. They had such a majesty to them. And I'm sort of an Anglophile anyway. I mean, anyone with a British accent. But then the brilliance of their crafts, the way they good weave, which is such an incredible thing, which is knowing that it's all made with beautiful intent, no child labor.
Yes.
There's such a greatness baked into that. That Eclipse rug, you could see all of the, can we go back for 1 minute, Emma? You can actually see the mauves bouncing off the landscape, which is in the rug. Yes, you see in the distance, right behind the sofa, you can see those hues that you also have in the ombre pillow, and then in the magnificent rug. Let's go to the next one.
So the other pattern is called Domus, and it comes in 2 colorways. There's a blush and a gray, and this was inspired by, I mean, everyone thinks about the skyline of New York. And so, it's, as you see out, you see some of the high rises. This is looking east towards the East River. And then to the right is looking south over Midtown. And just to see the way the buildings intersect, the way the play of light changes throughout the day, to see the reflections of the buildings on Central Park, which I know sort of some people are quite outraged about. But for me, I think change is good. And I love... Right. I mean, it's progress, it's change. New York, none of us is meant to be static and the same forever. And so while I may not love the architecture of all the buildings going up in the city, I love the progress. And so
I feel the same way. I was a 9/11 New Yorker, and I lived right by the towers. And I remember thinking, no, build them back exactly as they were. And while it was the worst horrific incidents ever, what is built there in its place is art in itself. It's
right.
Sorry.
Well, you and I were kind of talking. It's hard to have a conversation these days without talking about how much our world has changed. And I think, one of the things I think you said is that it's a moment, it's a transformative moment, and how are we going to emerge from this pandemic and working from home, and what's going to be different. And I think we all as designers realize the importance of home, and I think a renewed understanding of the importance of home. So I think, you and I are excited as designers to consider where that may take us with our clients. But, I'm
not done with the rug. Sorry, Emma, go back. I could talk about it all day.
But I think we're finding that we're incredibly resilient, and for me as a New Yorker, and you just figure it out and you pick up and you move on. And so also for me, because this collection was so directly influenced by New York, as you can see, and because it launched, unfortunately during this time, I have said, it seemed to me the only right thing to do is to sort of give back to the city that's been so kind to me. And So my my proceeds from sales of the rugs this year are going to go to New York hospitals. So that's been a really exciting thing to partner with, you know, the rug company on. It just, you know,
amazing.
I love New York. Can we talk about, can we switch over to you for a bit?
Yes,
and then we
I
can
have
come
one
back?
question. How did you do is it overlay? Is that what I'm seeing in the texture?
Yeah, so again, and this is what is so brilliant about working with the rug company, is they help you to figure out, I mean, literally what happened here was there were lots of photographs of the buildings at different times of day in the shadow. And I don't know how sort of low tech you are, but I'm pretty low tech. I mean, all the designers in my office are super whiz bang. They're amazing, these kids. But I was cutting out pieces of paper and laying them on top of each other. So by playing with pile heights and, you know, just little bits of silk here and there, but mostly, you know how they get that very defined clipped edge around different colors and pile heights. And so it does have that feeling of being layered, which was the intention. And it, you know, it just came out, these came out even better than I had dreamed.
It is to die for. It is to die for.
Can I talk to you about your waves? I mean, Waves is one of my all-time favorite rug company rugs because I feel like it's bold, but it can go just about anywhere. What it does to a room, I think, is really smart. So it must have been a very, I don't know how long it took you to come up this. I don't know if this happens to you, Adam, but I'm going to tell you something in all honesty.
Yeah,
so sometimes I see things and I'm like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. And for a moment, and then I try to push it down. I'm like, why didn't I think of that?
That's how you always know if something's good. That's my litmus test. I tell everybody, if someone's done it perfectly, it's like, you've done it. They've done it. You win, which is how I feel about so much of your interiors, by the way.
Well, you won, but on this one, I have to say there was a moment where I was like, Adam.
Oh, I love it. We have an amazing version coming out soon in chartreuse, if you can imagine, with chartreuse and cream, which is lovely. The waves, you know, I think I'm a Cancer, so I love water in general. But, you know, believe it or not, I was very inspired by the hand of, I don't know if you know the poet, young children's writer, Shel Silverstein.
Of course.
Who did The Giving
Tree.
Yes, and that's, so you can see a similar stroke in the hand of this, The Giving Tree, or The Missing Piece. And yeah, this has been a nice rug. Why don't we sift through a little bit of my collection?
Well, what I like, before you move on, what I like about it is the movement that's been created. And I think, you know, knowing how much time and thought goes into these rugs, I think what's magical about it, can we just go back for 1 second, is if the line weight.
I can hear him coming home, by the way. I'm giving you a warning. I can hear him.
2-minute warning. But what I love about it is that the line weight is just right. And so it's interesting, you're telling me it's from those kind of, you know, pen and ink drawings or whatever he did. But if it was a little thinner, it probably wouldn't telegraph the way it does. If it was a little thicker, it'd probably be too graphic. And it's just
the perspective. We looked at a few perspectives of it. You're right, of how to get it so it felt like it was buoyant and moving. And people are afraid of too much pattern, and this was sort of a good moment in the middle, I think.
I totally agree.
Thank you. So sweet. Is Gunnar, anyone there?
Oh, should I? Gunnar, come meet your boyfriend on the West Coast. Well, so Adam and I agreed, because I have this thing about his dog Bodhi, that we would share our mascots. Oh my God.
I'll wait till Gunnar comes out.
He's such a love.
He's wearing a little Paul Smith collar. Hi, buddy. Hi, bud. Can you say
hello?
Oh
my gosh, he's such a love. How is he with cats?
You know, he's the chillest dog in the whole world. I don't know how I ended up with just like the chillest dog. I lucked out.
This is not going to go as well, because unlike Bodhi, he won't wear, you know, you can't put a collar on this one. You can't, you know, he's wily.
Look at the colors of that cat. He's
such a love. He's purring. I don't know if you can hear.
I can totally hear. So
he's such a love. And so do you think if they look, Gunnar, it's Bodhi. Oh no, see, we lost him.
I love it. Oh my God, I want that picture. That's actually a really cute picture. Snap, screenshot that.
Right, I'm gonna. He can stay. Bodhi can stay, but I have to send Gunnar off. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I have to send Bodhi. Bodhi will hang out. let me go back to, there's your wonderful son, Arno, right?
That's my wonderful son, Arno, that has the Paul Smith rug, and he's
No.
ascending the staircase.
He is ascending the staircase like Norma Desmond. I mean, that is an incredible plastic staircase. You could tell this that those gorgeous sculptural things you got from Bali. I'm just dying. Can we maybe go back to just to zip through mine? We don't need to make it a commercial, but just to maybe let people see some of the new designs, Emma?
Yes, and I want to say something that you touched on, which I think is so interesting, because we always think about rugs as a work of art, but we're used to seeing works of art, in this plane, right? In the horizontal, yes, on a wall, the sculpture. And you touched on something that I think is so prescient. You put it down on this plane and the perspective changes and you interact with it in a way that you don't with your artwork, but it really is a work of art. And so I think considerations of how perspective changes, how a rug can pull you into a room are so important.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is extraordinary.
This rug was actually, we're looking at, called Tundra, named by Kaylee Nichols at my company, was actually sky. So it was a photo that I had taken in Central Park of the sky.
Oh, wow.
And it morphed into this, It's sometimes when you're creating these rugs, especially with the wonderful staff over there, Millie, who we both worked with, they take on a life and sort of become something else. And this sort of ended up looking like the terrain of Joshua Tree, here in Los Angeles. It had sort of a different feel to it.
It totally does. It feels like, Earth seen from space. There's a topography to it that's so beautiful. There's like watery areas. And again, that layered, and what is it, wool and silk? What's happening there?
It's wool and silk, and I cut the piles like you did, although I'm sort of obsessed with the straight lines of your pile. But this was more about terrain. You're absolutely right. It went from looking up to looking down.
And those colors are beautiful.
Colors are cool, aren't they? Again, you have to think of, and you did it brilliantly, what colors people can live with. People are afraid of color. So careful blues, careful mauve, things that you see in the sunset, like yours, or the greenery outside. I find that people can relate to those more often than some of our more bold clients who are like red, orange, and
Totally agree, but you see there's saturation, there's richness to the colors, but you're right. Like if you take your cues from nature, especially what you're seeing outside the windows at that particular, home, it's never like you're going to be like, oh my gosh, the sky, it's too garish today. It's not going with my sofa. Close the curtains. So
absolutely right.
This I love.
Thank you. This was a labor of love. I do remember bringing this to Chris Sharp in 2013. And he said to me, oh, it's too abstract, Audie. No one's going to buy abstract. And I was like, because they were very geometric, because his wonderful wife, Suzanne, did many, many geometric rugs. And I was like, I sort of have a feeling, I grew up in Chicago, the Art Institute and all the Impressionists were very, very important to me in making my aesthetic. So I love, similar to what you love, I think, how things move and how the light catches it. So there are actually 18 threads creating this almost photographic image, which again was sort of not done a little while ago, but now you can see being thought out. And then a really quick story, which is nice, is maybe we can show the stairwells, Emma, of when it turns into the smoke sunset. There were two versions. I'm a Wizard of Oz fan, so as you know, that the first part of it begins in black and white, and then it as Dorothy Gale lands in Kansas City, it bursts into the magic of the rainbow, and that's here. And she's like, "Shit, I'm finding it right now."
Did you start with a sketch, or how did you get this?
We lit a match in a dark room.
I love that.
Because I wanted to, and I actually have them, and you can see the different layers and how it's sort of billowed, and it's sort of like you want to, again, you want to capture its own, what it does by itself, which is sort of like trusting the process, which goes back to my mantra, which is something that I say in my life to my clients, to my friends, to my family. Do you have a design mantra that you go by, that you love?
It changes. I would say fear not.
That's good.
Come on this journey with me. I mean, fear, because, the process, as you know, is it's complicated. It's, you know, it's a very intimate relationship you have with a client. It's their home. It's where their family lives. It's a long process. It's a lot of decisions. It can be quite expensive. And so I think it's about the trust that you build up with clients to say,
Totally.
you know, this is, so fear not in the sense it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. We're going to try to make it fun and you're going to learn something, but also don't be afraid, like you said, of color. Don't be afraid of seeing things in a different context and taking you a little bit out of your comfort zone. I mean, this is just magical.
Well, so that's when so the beginning of the stairwell, what you're not seeing is the regular color. And then as we went down to the secret room downstairs, you pushed open a bookshelf, you went down to the lower level, it turned into color for a la the Wizard of Oz. So that's nice. Thank you.
But what I love is, and rugs have the power to do this, is how it draws you up the stairs. So it takes you on this journey, and it makes, I think, the experience of ascending the staircase more than just one step after another. You feel like you're sort of, I don't know, in a movie or something. It makes it more of an experience. And
I love the theatricality that we actually both have, Kelly, if I might be so bold to compare myself. We both have that. We both have it also restrained. I'm not a restrained person, I always say, but I like designs to be restrained. And when you look behind you, you don't have a lot of color right now. You have gorgeous plays of white and sculpture and shape, you know? And I could go on and on and on about it. I think they're probably going to want us to get to our questions. I think we have a little, let me see, questions. We have some questions printed out that I think people submitted, and I only have the ones that say KB on them. So let me look.
Okay, well, I'm gonna help you out. I'm gonna feed you your line. How's that?
Okay, great, please.
I was never in the theater. So one of the questions for me was what comes first, the rug or the rest of the interiors? And I think that's a very good question. And I'm interested if you have a similar experience. I mean, certainly my Paul Smith story, the swirl rug, there was no design, there was no room until I saw that. And I think because rugs are such an important feature in a room, not just in terms of bringing warmth and layering, but they tend to be the biggest thing in the room in terms of just square footage.
The often most ignored, they're expensive. The people don't understand the process of them. They're afraid of their pets. There are a million reasons, almost like curating an art collection, just leave your walls white, as opposed to, I always say, put something up there, put filler, put something that speaks to you. It doesn't matter where it's from.
Right. And well, there's such a big gesture in the space. I think it's important to get it right. And I think that frequently that is sometimes why I do start with a rug. And I'm not always aware that I've done it, but that's what I do. So off this room that I'm in here, it's actually a bunch of ceremonial kuba claws, African kuba claws that, you know, you see on pillows all the time. But I got the full strips and I had them sewn into rugs. And I knew that that's where I wanted to start with the space. So I do think because rugs, you know, I feel like
they elicit an emotion. There's a feeling that you feel like how when we met each other, you know what I mean? It's that same thing. There's like a, oh, this is it.
Well, rugs also, I think, are important because they delineate a space, they warm up a space, they soften, not just in a tactile sense, but also just acoustically. Because if you're sitting and there's like ricocheting sounds all over the place, but so there's a beautiful calm and a tranquility that rugs bring acoustically to a space. And I feel like the reason I like them to sort of be more on the generous side is I feel like when you step onto the rug, you feel like you've arrived in the room. Do you know what I mean? With your runner up the stairs, I feel like I've arrived, like I'm now, okay, now I'm taking this journey up the stairs. So they delineate spaces and they kind of tell a story. Yeah.
100%. And I tend to love organic, fluid rugs rather than a little more geometric, but you know, that's per the client or that tailored look. It sort of depends on the process. What qualities of materials do you prefer for choosing a rug design? Actually, that was a question.
I know, that's okay. This happened, I'm sure, on Broadway.
Yes.
Anyway, I have a question.
What comes first for you? Yes, go.
So my question for you is, how do you choose a rug for your room? And what quality and materials do you prefer when you choose?
I always love wool and silk. I think that it makes it so special. I know that there are ways now to value engineer things, which is very important. I have a little spin-off line with the rug company called TRC Lab. Actually, I have some samples, believe it or not.
Oh, I'd love to see.
Which are, this was used in the Kip Space Show House in different colors. Here is And there's like a difference between waves that was done, and then here's another version with the bamboo silk, which is more affordable.
Right.
So again, this is TRC Lab. Oh gosh, here was one of the first colorways of the Smoke Sunset, which is very pretty.
Beautiful.
With all, you can see all the colors on it.
Beautiful.
Anyway, I think it speaks to, I think it's you have to feel it. It's very unique. You know, I've sort of been stuck on my own rug, and I've been asking my senior designer, Danielle, to help me, you know, do you like this? Do you like this? She was like, it's you. This has to be, you have to feel this. And
right.
That's true sometimes with our clients as well. We have to filter their best, who they are, through our filter.
Right. I totally agree. These rooms need to look like our clients, like the best version of themselves. And I think that's part of our process, is to make that happen, to facilitate that happening. Because I don't want every room looking like you can immediately look at it and be like, oh, that's a Kelly Behun. Or I don't look at yours and I say, oh, Adam. There's right. a sense of individuality that I think is really, you know, really important when you're working with clients.
Absolutely.
But wool versus silk with you, do you ever like do all silk, or how do you decide wool versus silk and how much?
I just love having both. I think the silk is what makes it shimmer. I think the silk is what adds that layer to it. Some clients, again, they're afraid of their pets and they won't. I defer to wool and silk. How about you?
I totally agree. I think that the way, and this is another thing that I think the people at the rug company are so good at helping you understand how the different fibers, the wool and the silk, take color differently. And the silk, like you said, sort of shimmers. And so I think if you use it strategically, if budget permits, you know, and you want to be careful, like in terms of how you position the rug, like you don't want to have something where the silk is all under the furniture, like what was the point? But if you have it strategically, it can enhance the design, I think. Totally. So I know on my designs, we used it strategically. So like you said, when you look across it and the light hits it, you know, it kind of dances. And so I think
that's right.
They bring out the best in each other, just like you and me.
I agree with you and me. By the way, we should do maybe there's a talk show in here for us. Maybe there's a talk show. I don't know.
You're silk, though.
A little good bounce through. How do you position rugs differently in a room? Oh, which leads me to a wonderful intro of another rug that I love that you designed for a client, the blue circular rug. Tell us the story of that.
Oh, wow. This is so,
how do you position a rug?
I love this. And this is all wool. And this was coming out of an idea of, I love doing mosaic. I love working in mosaic tile. So this is a stone mosaic tile table, and I really wanted it to have this effect of it growing literally out of the rug. And so you can imagine there was an enormous amount of coordination once I got the tiles figured out in that design, and translating so that the color, of course, they're never going to be exactly the same, but I was amazed at how close they were able to get the rug to these sort of lapis blue tiles. And so underneath this table, it's about a 40-inch round table, is exactly on the rug is this exact same pattern. So if you were to move the table, it's exactly telegraphed.
It's down through the looking glass, you know?
Totally. And so to get this sort of layered effect, it was so much fun. And it's one of my favorite rooms, and the clients love blue. And, you know,
it's an iconic picture and design already. I mean, I'm not kissing your ass. I'm being honest. That's a picture people know. I can reference that. Look at that. Look at that.
Why,
gorgeous,
thank you.
Gorgeous room with that beautiful plaster chandelier, the millwork. I mean, I could just devour everything. But you're right. The blue is the lapis, almost cobalt.
Right.
So majestic. Did you design the table as well, did you say?
Yes. So it was getting the coordination between the two trades was, you know, I was sort of angst-ridden until we installed it, and I just could not believe how perfectly it came out. And that's just like, you know, that's the best feeling, when your dreams get telegraphed and they're even better than what you dreamed.
Yes, totally. Like, it's gorgeous. Going back to my questions. Oh, is silk, we were talking about the dancing. Is silk really worth the extra cost? Because there is certainly a cost.
I mean, I don't know. I've used some all silk. I tend to try to, now that I've sort of experimented a bit with it, if it's all silk, I try to relegate it to a master bedroom, or perhaps a place that is maybe a little bit more dimly lit, because it can be, like Gunnar, a little bit finicky. We love our silk, but you gotta work for it. You gotta really, you know, to maintain it, you know, it's a bit of, so it can be worth it. But I think, like you, I think the very best is the combination, because I just love all wool. But when you have those strategic moments of silk, if you can afford it, my gosh, it's magic.
If you can afford it, it's such an important way to go. And I also find that I had a bad experience with bamboo silk with Travis Barker, who was my client very early on in my career. So I can't use bamboo silk anymore, because if you breathe on it in some cases, I mean, they have different new words, new kinds coming out of threads, banana silk, other things. But they're not as stable.
Totally agree.
What would you say?
I have a question somebody had for you. Someone's asked, I love mixing designer pieces and more traditional ones. Any advice on what piece to get from a designer?
What piece to get from a designer? Is in a rug or a piece of furniture?
Well, I don't know. This is coming from one of our viewers, so I think you're just going to have to wing it.
Okay. Yes. Let me think. Well, I think it's always about the juxtaposition, don't you? The mix. I think that's what's thrilling. One of the things that I'm obsessed with architecture is the glass box architecture, like when you have a London brownstone and then you have this radical glass Apple Store thing in the back.
Exactly.
So again, the mix and the juxtaposition is where that happens. So I would say a contemporary rug would look okay. The smoke rug looked great in that rather traditional Brentwood den where you saw the gray paneling. So maybe that might be an answer for that.
Yeah. No, I think so. You're right. It's the conversation that these objects have in a space with each other. And if you really love something, I think about the Alexander McQueen, the rug, the black rug with the explosion of flowers in the middle. I think it's chiaroscuro.
One of my favorite in the world.
That takes some guts to go there. But I think, some of the most memorable spaces I've ever been in rooms I've seen, are the ones where if you were to put it all on paper, you'd be like, oh, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. I was recently looking at something, everyone loves, Gio Ponti's, the Villa Planchart in I think it's in Caracas. And you look at it and it's like a wildly patterned, sort of randomly patterned color stone floor. And it's a ceiling that has similar colors, but asymmetrically crazy painted. And then I remember looking at the sconces, and I'm like, those are way too high on the wall. And the art was sort of oddly hung, but all together in this sort of gestalt, it's brilliant. So when you look at some of these rugs, I feel like, don't be afraid. I used to make Memphis inspired furniture, and people would be amazed, have these like black and white, bold stripes and bold shock of color and just,
why Memphis inspired? I'm so curious.
Well, and so, but people would be amazed. Are
you from Pittsburgh, right?
Yes.
I did Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera for 4 years.
Oh my gosh.
So I spent all my summers in Shadyside and Squirrel Hill.
That's my jam.
That's your jam. You certainly don't sound like you're from Pittsburgh. Sorry to interrupt you.
I'm from Pittsburgh, Western PA. But the point is about the Memphis stuff is that people would be amazed at how, if you put this sort of radical looking Memphis piece into sort of traditional room, how it can sort of reinvigorate the conversation. Everything gets recontextualized. You see the thing next to it in a whole different light. And so, like you said, it's the relationship. It's, and one of the things I think I really like about, it was a bit of a bold choice, all the negative space on your smoke rug. There's a lot of negative space, and you just allow the design to sort of, meander through at its own
pace. I got a lot of stuff from that in the creation of it. They were like, it's not enough. It doesn't do enough of a rug. And I was like, but it's about the one magic part of it, and the magic part of it needs the space. That's so lovely of you to comment on.
Yeah, no. So I think that's our advice to young designers, right? Fear not.
Fear not. Kelly Wersler says something similar. She says, be bold, take risks or something like that. But I like fear not because it's also leans into the process. And like you said, the process is long, expensive. You're asking people to trust you, and you're also asking people to, you're taking their money. You don't see the result for a long time. It's not like you're picking up your product. So that nuanced relationship, which, as a designer, that's the part I had to sort of navigate around and figure out how to best work it. And I would say it's one of my favorite parts is sort of that relationship with the clients. That's what I would say to young designers too, even though it's intimidating at first.
Yeah, completely agree. And there's just something, I think, we take that relationship so seriously. I mean, it's a sacred relationship. And I think, building that trust and, when it leads up to results like, the way that Blue Room came out and some of the spaces you showed came out and clients love it, there's no greater validation. But rugs are a really important part of it, and rugs can be expensive, but I think no matter what your budget is, you need to sort of invest as much as you can in the highest quality that you can in whatever budget you're in. And I think a rug is a really important part of that. And if you go with a very high quality wool rug, I go back to my swirl, it's been there for, I don't know, 12 or 14 years now.
And it will be forever because it's so
beautiful. It's an heirloom piece.
And it's art, it's an heirloom piece. And
he wanted to take it to the college dorm, but I had to draw the line there because I thought,
he's a great, I love that he wanted to do that.
Yeah,
that's great.
But I had to say no, so.
He has good taste. You know, I think of, also want to give a shout out to Jim Seuss, our wonderful CEO of the rug company, who's done magnificent things. I remember being at dinner with Jim recently at the Chateau, and he said that you were coming on, and I don't know if I texted you or said something, but I was just so excited.
You did, you're so sweet.
He brings on the absolute best. Do you feel like, it's how do you tell someone to go bold, or how do you let them discover that they want to go bold, rather than play it safe?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think, you know, sometimes people, they play it safe and then they look back and they regret it. And so I do think that if you are careful and you plan, you know, I'm not saying I don't think you make a rug purchase precipitously or just on a whim. But I think if you think through the steps, I mean, to take that rug, the McQueen one, you know, and build a room around it, that's going to be a room that you're not going to forget. So just don't be afraid to go bold, but think about the adjoining spaces. If it's more than a one room home or apartment, think about how the flow is and how do you want that room to feel when you enter it. Maybe you want that shot in the arm. I think, you know, again, back to the fashion designer, Mary Katranzu, I'm not sure if I said her name right.
Oh, I love her. Love that bold.
Beautiful designs, and her, like, it's like ray beam or something, I don't know, I'm going to say it wrong. It's so beautiful, it's bold, and it has a very strong center with these rays that emanate out, but it's so, you know, it makes a statement in the room, but it also plays well with others, as I like to say. But, you know, here's the other thing, and then I think they want us to wrap it up. But Adam, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like we put these designs out there. I know how much time and care went into picking the colors and making sure they were just right. But if someone goes in, and that's again something that the rug company does so well, is all the bespoke stuff. So maybe they're like, okay, I love the Eclipse or Domus, but I want to change a color. Have at it. I love seeing how people interpret these designs and make it work for them. And so, you know, you might see something and you'd be like, oh, it's bold and I love the pattern. Maybe your waves or smoke, but
wait, I'm going to illustrate it. If we could, right before we wrap up, let's go back to the Zibois, the original one, and then the Zibois blue, because.
But you could.
Yes.
You could desaturate those colors and still get the beauty of your design, but it could be much quieter.
There's Zibois, which was my first rug, which was between zebra and wood grain. It was supposed to be an impressionistic moment between there. And the client loved it, but they said, but I love blue. So we ended up doing Zibleu instead of Zibois, which you'll see.
Well, I love it.
But that's what you're speaking to with bespoke. Making things that are special. Oh, I don't know that you can see much of the rug in that.
Oh, I love it. But that's the thing. Make it work for you. Yeah. Avail yourself of their experts. You will find something. There's a vast range of designs, from something quiet and classic to something quite bold and you know, innovative.
There's a reason they are who they are. You know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Emma. There's a reason.
Well, I'm so happy to be part of the club, and I think you and I could go on
forever, and I think there might be a show in here. So let's talk off the record. But
well, certainly for Gunnar and Bodie, for sure.
Yes. Thank you, Kelly Behun. You're such a doll. Mwah.
Love you.
Love you. Talk to you soon.
Be well. And thanks, everyone, for joining us.